What would you do if the man you loved faked his own death, just to test the hearts of those closest to him? When Ivy walked into that grand hall, they saw nobody, a woman in a thrift store cardigan, holding a secret that could burn everything to the ground. They laughed. They mocked. They reached for his wealth. And then the screen flickered on. He was watching. Alive. And everything changed. This isn't just a story about money. It's about masks coming off. It's about loyalty, love, and the brutal cost of betrayal. Stay with me, because what happens in the next 10 minutes will change the way you look at family forever. She was dismissed the moment she stepped into the will reading. A gray linen dress, a faded cardigan, and quiet flats, just enough to draw sneers across a room full of polished heirs, their grins too sharp to be sincere. A man in a gold tie was the first to speak, half laughing, half mocking. "Is that the maid?" A young woman tilted her head and whispered into her friend's ear. Probably some sad ex-mistress looking for a payout. Ivy Clark stood at the back of the room. She didn't answer, didn't flinch, just adjusted the strap of the cloth bag in her hand. Because to them, she was just a shadow, an outsider who had wandered into a room meant for blood, legacy, and status. But they were wrong. Because the woman they just humiliated was the legal wife of the man they were all here to inherit from. And today's reading of the will was a test she helped design. The Thorne estate sprawled across a wooded hill, its stone walls and iron gates a fortress against the world. Inside, the grand hall smelled of old money, polished oak, leather, and the faint tang of roses from vases that cost more than most people's rent. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, catching the April light and scattering it across a crowd of 42 relatives, investors, advisors, assistants. Each one dressed to claim their stake in Logan Thorne's empire. Tailored suits, silk dresses, diamonds that winked with every gesture. They milled about, sipping champagne, their condolences as rehearsed as their smiles. Ivy slipped in quietly, her flats silent on the marble floor. She chose the back corner near a tall window that framed the misty hills outside. Her dress was simple, loose enough to move in, the gray fabric soft from years of wear. Her cardigan, a pale blue that had seen better days, hung slightly off one shoulder. Her dark hair was pulled into a low bun, a few strands loose, framing a face that needed no makeup to hold its own, high cheekbones, hazel eyes that saw everything, and lips that stayed closed when others would have snapped back. At 36, Ivy was beautiful in a way that didn't shout but lingered, like a melody you couldn't forget. The man in the gold tie, Preston Thorne, Logan's second cousin, leaned against a mahogany table, his Rolex catching the light as he smirked. "Seriously, who let the cleaning staff in?" His voice carried, deliberate, drawing chuckles from a cluster of cousins nearby. A woman in a crimson dress, Marissa, Preston's sister, tossed her hair and added, "Maybe she's here to dust the will before it's read." More laughter, sharp and brittle like glass breaking. Across the room, a younger woman, Clara, a niece with a tech startup and a TikTok following, nudged her friend Elise, a former assistant to Logan's CFO. "Bet she's one of his charity cases," Clara whispered, loud enough for Ivy to hear. "Or a mistress he forgot about. Look at her bag, like she's carrying her lunch." Elise snickered, snapping a discreet photo with her phone. "This is going on my story. #Thorne will flop." Clara's fingers flew across her phone, her smirk growing as she typed a caption for the photo she'd just taken of Ivy. Found Logan's charity case crashing the will reading. "Guess she thinks thrift store chic gets her $1 billion, she said aloud, ensuring Ivy heard every word. The crowd around her laughed, some pulling out their own phones to like and share the post, which was already gaining traction online. Comments flooded in, strangers calling Ivy a nobody and desperate, their words a digital pylon that echoed the room's disdain. Ivy stood motionless, her hazel eyes catching the glow of Clara's screen, but she didn't speak. Her silence seemed to fuel their glee, as if her composure was a challenge they had to break. Elise, Clara's friend, leaned in, her voice dripping with pity. "Poor thing doesn't even know she's a meme now." The laughter swelled, a chorus of cruelty that painted Ivy as less than human, her dignity a target for their amusement. Ivy's fingers tightened briefly on her cloth bag, a plain thing stitched with care, not a logo in sight. She didn't look at Clara or Elise, didn't acknowledge Preston's taunt or Marissa's barb. She stood still, her breathing even, her gaze fixed on the empty chair at the front where the lawyer would sit. To them, her silence was weakness, a sign she didn't belong. They couldn't see the steel beneath it, the way her stillness held the room without trying. The crowd grew louder as more arrived. A former investor, Gerald Hayes, in a pinstriped suit, muttered to his wife, "Logan always had strays hanging around. This one's got no business here." His wife, dripping in emeralds, nodded, her eyes raking Ivy's outfit. "No class?" she said, her voice a stage whisper. "She's embarrassing the family just standing there." A distant cousin, Trevor, in a velvet blazer, called out, "Hey sweetheart, kitchen's that way." He pointed toward a side door, grinning as his friends clapped him on the back. A woman in pearls, Lillian, an aunt twice removed, clucked her tongue. "Really, someone should escort her out before the lawyer gets here. It's disrespectful to Logan's memory." Marissa, her crimson dress swishing with every step, crossed the room toward Ivy, her heels clicking like a countdown. She stopped inches away, towering over Ivy's smaller frame, her perfume sharp and suffocating. "You're in the wrong place, darling," she said, her voice loud enough to draw every eye. She reached out, flicking Ivy's cardigan as if it were trash, her nails grazing the fabric with deliberate disdain. "This isn't a soup kitchen. Why don't you leave before you embarrass yourself further?" The crowd watched, some smirking, others whispering, none stepping in. Ivy's hands stayed steady on her bag, but the invasion of her space felt like a violation. Marissa's closeness was a calculated threat. A cousin nearby muttered, "She's got some nerve staying." And the room's approval of Marissa's aggression was palpable, their silence complicit in Ivy's humiliation. Ivy didn't move. Her eyes flicked briefly to the security camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. She knew it was live, feeding to a private server only 2 people could access. One was her. The other wasn't here. Not yet. As Grayson prepared to read, Trevor slipped behind Ivy, his velvet blazer brushing the wall as he whispered to his friends, "Watch this." He pulled a cocktail napkin from a nearby table, scribbled charity case in Sharpie, and tucked it into the strap of Ivy's bag when she wasn't looking. The room noticed, snickers spreading like wildfire as people pointed at the note, its bold letters a brand on Ivy's back. Clara snapped another photo, her laughter barely contained, while Elise whispered, "She's a walking joke now." Ivy stood unaware, her focus on Grayson, but the crowd's glee was electric. Their amusement a knife twisted in her dignity. Trevor leaned back, grinning, as Lillian muttered, "Serves her right for showing up like that." The prank wasn't just cruel. It was a spectacle designed to make Ivy a fool for daring to exist among them. The lawyer, Arthur Grayson, entered at precisely 10 a.m., his gray suit crisp, his briefcase heavy with secrets. He was older, 60-some, with a face carved by decades of handling fortunes and feuds. The room hushed as he set his briefcase on the table, opened it, and pulled out a single sealed envelope. No flourish, no preamble. He adjusted his glasses and scanned the crowd, his gaze pausing on Ivy for a fraction of a second, long enough to unsettle Preston, who frowned and whispered to Marissa, "What's that about?" Gerald Hayes stood, his pinstriped suit creasing as he pointed at Ivy, his voice booming like a judge delivering a verdict. "This woman's a fraud," he declared, his finger trembling with indignation. "Logan would never let someone like her near his estate. She's here to scam us, plain and simple." The room buzzed with agreement, heads nodding, eyes narrowing at Ivy as if she were a thief caught red-handed. His wife, her emeralds glinting, added, "She's probably got a fake ID in that rag of a bag." The accusation hung heavy, turning Ivy into a criminal in their minds, her presence an offense they couldn't tolerate. Ivy's gaze remained steady, but the weight of their judgment pressed down. Each word was a lash meant to strip her bare. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, their outrage a performance for each other. Ivy's silence only fueled their need to tear her apart. Grayson cleared his throat. We're here to read the last will and testament of Logan Alexander Thorne. Executed 3 years ago and verified as authentic. Murmurs rippled through the room. 3 years? Logan had vanished only 6 months ago. His private jet lost over the Pacific. No wreckage, no body, just a void that fueled headlines and greed. Most assumed he'd died. Most hoped. Preston straightened his tie, his smirk returning. Let's get to it then. Who gets the keys to the kingdom? Clara leaned forward, her manicured nails tapping her phone, already planning her victory post. Gerald crossed his arms, muttering about stock options. Lillian clutched her pearls, whispering to Trevor about the summer house in Nice. Ivy stayed still, her bag now resting at her feet. She watched Grayson's hands as he broke the seal, the crack of wax loud in the quiet room. The crowd leaned in, their breathing shallow, their eyes hungry. This was it. The moment they'd dressed for, schemed for, flown across continents for. Logan's empire, tech patents, real estate, a biotech firm worth $90 billion, was up for grabs. Or so they thought. Grayson unfolded the paper, his voice steady but deliberate. Each word dropped like a stone into still water. I, Logan Alexander Thorne, being of sound mind, declare this my final will. To my family, colleagues, and associates, I leave nothing but this truth: wealth reveals character, not worth. The room froze. Preston's smile faltered. Clara's phone slipped an inch in her hand. Gerald's jaw tightened, his wife's emeralds suddenly heavy. Nothing? It had to be a mistake. Grayson continued unfazed. All my assets, company shares, properties, accounts, and intellectual rights, are bequeathed to one person. The one who stood by me for no reason other than love. The one who never asked my net worth, never sought my name for status. My wife, Ivy. A gasp tore through the room, sharp and jagged. Heads whipped around, searching for a face that matched the name. Preston barked a laugh, short and disbelieving. Wife? Logan wasn't married. Marissa's hand flew to her mouth, her crimson nails stark against her paling skin. Clara's eyes narrowed, darting to Elise, who mouthed, What the hell? Gerald stood, his chair scraping the floor. This is absurd. Logan never mentioned a wife. It's a scam. Someone's forged the damn thing. Lillian clutched Trevor's arm, her voice shrill. She's not here, is she? Some gold digger we've never met stealing what's ours. Grayson held up a hand, silencing them. The will is legal, signed and notarized. Supporting documents, marriage certificate, photographs, personal letters, are available for verification. He reached into his briefcase, pulling out a folder. He opened it, revealing a photograph. Logan, younger, laughing, his arm around Ivy in a simple white dress, standing outside a courthouse. The date on the back read 7 years ago. The room erupted. Preston slammed a fist on the table. This is insanity. Who is she? Clara stood, her phone forgotten. Where's this Ivy? Show her. Trevor sneered. Probably some con artist hiding in Belize. Marissa's voice cut through, venomous. If she's real, why is she not here? Too ashamed to show her face? Ivy stepped forward. The movement was quiet, deliberate, like a tide turning. Her flats made no sound, but every eye followed her as she crossed the room. Her cardigan swayed slightly, her linen dress catching the light. She stopped beside Grayson, her posture straight, her face calm. The cloth bag hung from her shoulder, unassuming, like her. The silence was deafening. Preston's mouth opened, then closed, his gold tie suddenly garish. Clara's face flushed, her earlier photo burning a hole in her phone. Gerald sank back into his chair, his wife's emeralds dull now. Lillian's pearls seemed to choke her, her hand frozen mid-gesture. Grayson nodded to Ivy, a faint respect in his eyes. Mrs. Thorne. He said it, handing her the folder. She took it without a tremor, her fingers steady as she opened it. A glance at the photograph, and her lips curved, just a hint, as if remembering the day it was taken. Then she closed the folder and faced the room. "I didn't come for the money," she said, her voice clear and low like a bell through fog. "I came to see who you were. Who among you cared for Logan as a man, not a bank account? Who'd mourn him, not his fortune?" She paused. Her hazel eyes swept the crowd, pinning each of them without effort. "You showed me exactly who you are." Preston found his voice shaky but defiant. "You're saying you're his wife? You!" He gestured at her cardigan, her linen dress, and let out a forced laugh. "Logan Thorne married to this? No offense, lady, but you look like you shop at thrift stores." Ivy didn't blink. "I do," she said simply. "Logan didn't care. He loved me for me, not for what I wore or what I owned. Can any of you say the same?" Clara snorted, folding her arms. "Nice act. But I'm not buying it. If you're his wife, where's the proof? A photo's not enough. Anyone can fake that." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, emboldening the crowd. Gerald nodded, voice rising again. "She's right. We need more. Witnesses, records, something real." Grayson calmly opened his briefcase again, pulling out a stack of documents. "Marriage license. Dated 7 years ago, signed by both parties and 2 witnesses, a nurse named Sarah Ellis and a librarian, Michael Reed. Personal letters from Logan to Ivy, handwritten and verified by forensic analysis. Bank records showing joint accounts, kept private at Logan's request." He paused, pulling out a small USB drive. "And video footage. From their wedding." He inserted the drive into a laptop. A screen on the wall flickered to life. The room held its breath. Grainy footage played. Courthouse steps. Logan in a simple suit. Ivy in a white dress. Both of them laughing as they kissed. Sarah and Michael clapped from the side. The date stamp matched the certificate. The crowd's defiance crumbled. Faces paled. Eyes darted to Ivy, who watched the footage with a quiet ache in her gaze. Marissa stood, her voice trembling with rage. "This is a setup. You planned this, didn't you? Tricking us into, what, looking bad? You're nobody. Logan would never marry someone like you." Her words stung, but Ivy's face didn't change. She let the venom hang in the air, unanswered. Then she spoke, her voice colder now, sharp enough to cut. "You're right about one thing. This was planned. Not to trick you. To test you. To see if any of you cared enough to ask who I was before you mocked me. To see if you'd honor Logan's memory, or just claw for his wealth." She stepped closer to the crowd. Her presence filled the room. "You failed. All of you." Trevor laughed, nervous now. "Test? What is this, a game show? Come on, you can't be serious." But his voice wavered as Ivy's eyes met his, steady and unyielding. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small remote. "Logan isn't dead," she said, each word deliberate. "He's alive. And he's been watching you this whole time." She pressed the remote. A monitor on the wall clicked on. There, in a dimly lit room, sat Logan Thorne. 42. Lean, with dark hair streaked with gray. His blue eyes were sharp as ever. He leaned back in a chair, expression calm but unyielding, like a judge weighing souls. The camera feed was live, the time stamp in the corner blinking, April 15th, 2025, 10:32 a.m. The room exploded. Gasps. Shouts. Disbelief. Preston stumbled back, his tie askew. Clara dropped her phone, the screen cracked on the marble. Gerald's wife clutched his arm, whispering, "No, it can't be." Lillian's pearls snapped. Beads scattered across the floor. Logan's voice came through the monitor, low, resonant. "You thought I was gone. You thought this was your chance to carve up my life like a cake. But I've been here. Watching. Listening. Every word. Every sneer. Every lie." His gaze shifted, as if looking through the camera at Ivy. She warned me you'd show your true colors. She was right. Ivy's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. She turned to the crowd, her voice steady. Logan's plane didn't crash. It was a cover. A way to step back, to see who'd stay loyal, and who'd turn. She let the silence settle before finishing. You all rushed here, dressed in your best, ready to claim what wasn't yours. But this was never about money. It was about truth. The grand hall's doors opened. And Logan walked in. He was real. Solid. His presence like a storm breaking. His suit was simple. No tie. His shoes scuffed from travel. The crowd parted as he crossed the room. Their whispers died. Their bravado gone. He stopped beside Ivy, his hand brushing hers, a quiet anchor. She looked up at him, her eyes softening for the first time. He nodded, a silent agreement. Then he turned to face the room. His voice carried without effort. Ivy designed this, the will, the reading, the cameras, all of it. She wanted to know who you were, when you thought no one was watching. Who'd respect a stranger? Who'd show kindness? Who'd care about me, not my bank account? He paused. His eyes swept the crowd, pinning each of them. Not one of you passed. Logan's eyes locked onto Preston, the man who'd mocked Ivy first. His gold tie now looked less like a symbol of wealth and more like a gaudy noose. You called my wife a maid, Logan said, his voice low but lethal, each word carving through the room's stunned silence. You laughed while she stood there alone, letting you show your true self. Did you think I wouldn't see? Preston shrank, his bravado gone. His hands fumbled with his tie as if it could somehow save him. The crowd watched, frozen, as Logan stepped closer. Despite the simplicity of his suit, his presence towered. You're not family, Preston, Logan said. You're a parasite. And I'm done feeding you. A guard appeared at Preston's side, his grip firm. As Preston was led out, his protests were drowned in the echo of Logan's words. The room felt lighter, justice a tangible force. Ivy's honor was restored with every step of Preston's disgrace. Preston tried one last plea, his voice cracking. Logan, come on, we didn't know. She didn't say anything. Logan's gaze snapped to him, cold and final. She shouldn't have had to. You saw a woman you didn't recognize, and your first instinct was to tear her down. That's not family. That's not loyalty. Clara stepped forward, desperate now. We're sorry, okay? We didn't mean it. Tell her, Logan. Tell her to forgive us. Her eyes darted to Ivy, pleading. But Ivy's face was stone, her silence louder than any accusation. Logan shook his head. It's not about forgiveness. It's about consequences. He nodded to Grayson, who stepped forward with another document. This, Grayson said, lifting the paper, is an addendum to the will. Effective immediately, anyone who insulted Ivy today, named in security footage, audio logs, or witness accounts, is cut off. No shares. No properties. No contact. You're done. He began reading names, his voice like a gavel. Preston Thorne. Marissa Thorne. Clara Evans. Gerald Hayes. Lillian Ward. Trevor Lang. Each name landed like a whip. Faces crumpled. Protests rose, and then died as security guards moved in. Preston shouted, You can't do this! I'm blood! But the guard didn't flinch. He took his arm, firm but calm, and led him toward the doors. Marissa followed, her crimson dress trailing behind, her sobs echoing down the marble hall. Clara clutched her cracked phone, whispering, This can't be happening. Her face drained of color as Logan turned to her, his gaze like glass. You turned my wife into a meme, he said, steady but searing. Thinking your followers would cheer you on. But lies don't last, Clara. He nodded to Grayson, who tapped at his laptop. Clara's phone buzzed violently in her hand. Her empire collapsed in real time. Posts deleted. Followers vanishing by the thousands. Sponsors severed ties with brutal efficiency. You're banned from my companies. My properties. My life, Logan said, as a guard took her arm. Her cracked phone slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a dull smack. Gasps rippled through the room like a chorus of awe. The space was electric with the thrill of justice. Ivy stood beside Logan, her silence a crown, as Clara's digital throne crumbled, her cruelty to Ivy now her undoing. Gerald's wife stepped forward, her emeralds flashing. We didn't mean. Logan cut her off. You called my wife classless. You don't get to stay. They left, heads bowed. The crowd thinned as guards escorted them out. Lillian's pearls crunched underfoot. A fitting end to her pride. And then, the doors shut. Silence. Only a handful remained. The ones who hadn't laughed. Who hadn't mocked or sneered. Sarah Ellis, the nurse from the wedding video, now older, her eyes wet with relief. Michael Reed, the librarian who nodded to Ivy as she entered, recognizing her quietly. And Anna, the groundskeeper who'd offered Ivy water before the reading. No questions asked? Logan turned to them, his voice softer now. You saw her. You didn't judge. That's what family means. He looked at Ivy, his hand finding hers again. You were right about all of it. Ivy's gaze lingered on the empty chairs, the spilled champagne, the broken pearls. I didn't want to be right, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I wanted them to be better. She faced the three who remained. Her eyes, at last, were warm. Thank you? For seeing me. Logan squeezed her hand, his voice just for her, low and sure. You're more than they'll ever understand. She smiled, small, but real, and leaned into him, her cardigan brushing his sleeve. The room was quiet now. The vultures gone. The truth laid bare. Ivy didn't need the money. The estate. The empire. She had never wanted it. She'd wanted Logan, alive, whole, hers. And now, with the world stripped down to its bones, they stood together. Unshaken. Outside, the hills glowed green under the April sky. And the cameras blinked off. Their work was done. If this story hit you hard, drop a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and hit that subscribe button for more stories that cut deep and lift high. Your support keeps the truth alive.